Hello, and welcome to Screaming in the Cloud with your host, Chief Cloud Economist at the Duckbill Group, Corey Quinn. This weekly show features conversations with people doing interesting work in the world of cloud, thoughtful commentary on the state of the technical world, and ridiculous titles for which Corey refuses to apologize. This is Screaming in the Cloud.
Supply chain attacks and other application exploits are growing faster than ever. Why is that? Well, here's an industry secret for you. Everyone is secretly really bad at their jobs a disturbing proportion of the time. A big, considerably more fixable reason is because vulnerable CI/CD systems, service accounts, and microservices all don't have an identity. No identity means no authentication and authorization when these services are used, which in turn tends to serve to maximize the blast radius of an attack. And that's why Teleport created Machine ID. Machine ID delivers identity-based access and audit for infrastructure resources like servers and databases, CI/CD automation, service accounts, and custom code and applications such as microservices. By consolidating identity-based credentials for engineers and the applications they write, Teleport closes the identity loophole that enables compromised infrastructure and code to be used in cyber attacks. People will still suck at our jobs, but Machine ID helps our security posture suck significantly less. Smash the link to learn more, along with the like and subscribe buttons while you're poking around down there. Welcome to Screaming in the Cloud. I'm Corey Quinn. Every once in a while on the Twitters, I see a glorious notification. Now, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, I am all, a Twitter, if you'll pardon the term, that they have brought someone new in over at RedMonk. RedMonk has been a longtime friend of the show. They're one of the only companies I can say that about and not immediately get a cease and desist for having said that. And their most recent hire is joining me today. Kate Holterhoff is a newly minted analyst over at RedMonk. Kate, thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here.
One of the things that's always interesting about RedMonk is how many different directions you folks seem to go in all at once. It seems that I keep crossing paths with you folks almost constantly when I'm talking to clients, when I'm talking to folks in the industry, and it could easily be assumed that you folks are 20, 30, 40 people, but to my understanding, there are not quite that many of you there.
That is very true. Yes, I am the fifth analyst on a team of 7, and was brought on the first of the year, and I'm thrilled to be here. I actually was, I would say, recruited by one of my friends at Georgia Tech, Kelly Fitzpatrick, who I taught technical communication with when we were both postdocs in their Britain Fellowship program.
So you obviously came out of an academic background. Is this your first excursion into industry?
No, actually, after getting my PhD in literary and cultural studies at Carnegie Mellon in 2016, I moved to Atlanta and took a postdoc at Georgia Tech. And after that was kind of winding down, I decided to make the jump to industry. So my first position out of that was at a digital marketing agency in Atlanta. And I was a front-end engineer for several years. And then towards the end of my tenure there, I moved into doing more of their production engineering and QA work, although it was deeply tied to my front-end work. So we spent a lot of time looking at how the websites looked at different media queries, making sure that there were no odd breakpoints. So certainly was an organic move there as their team expanded.
You have spent significant amounts of time in the academic landscape. When you start talking about, I took on a postdoc position, that's usually the sign of not your first year on a college campus in most cases. I mean, again, with an 8th grade education, I'm not really the person to ask, but I sit here in awe as people who are steeped in academia wind up going about the magic that from where I sit, they tend to do. What was it that made you decide that, I really enjoy the field that I've gotten a doctorate in? You just recently published a book that is, or at least tangentially related to the space, but you decide, what I really want to do now? That's right. Front-end engineering. I want to spend more or less 40 some odd hours a week, slowly going mad because CSS, and I can't quite get that thing to line up the way that I wanted to. Now, at least that's my experience with it. For folks who are, competent at it, I presume that's a bit of a different story.
Yes, I considered naming my blog at RedMonk "How to Center a Div." So, uh, yes, that is certainly an ongoing issue. I think for anyone in tech, any practitioners. So yeah, so I guess my story probably began in 2013, the real move into to technology. So getting a PhD, of course, takes a very, very long time. So I started at Carnegie Mellon in 2009. And in 2013, I started a digital archive called Visual Haggard. And it's a Ruby on Rails site. You can visit it at visualhaggard.org. And it is a digital archive of illustrations that were created to accompany a 19th century writer, H. Rider Haggard. And I became very interested in all the illustrations that had been created to accompany both the serialization of his fictions, but also the later novelizations. And it's kind of like how we have all these different movie adaptations of like Spider-Man that come out every couple of years. These illustrations were just very iterative, and generally the scholarship that I saw really only focused on the first illustrations that came out. So, so this was a sort of response to that. How can we use technology to showcase all the different types of illustrations and how maybe different artists would interpret that literature differently? And so that drove me into a discipline called the digital humanities, which really sort of focuses on that question, which is how do computers help us to understand the humanities better? And so that incorporates not only the arts but also literature, philosophy, new media. It's an extremely broad subject, and it's evolving, as you can imagine, as the things that technology can do expands. So I became interested in this subject and really was drawn to the sort of archival aspects of this, which wasn't really my training. I think that's something that you think of librarians as being more focused on, but I became acquainted with all these very obscure editions. But in any event, it also taught me how to use technology. I was involved in the RDF export for incorporating the site on Nines, which is sort of a larger agglomeration of 19th century archives. So, and I was just really drawn to a lot of the sort of new things that we could do. So I began to use it more in my teaching. So not only did I, and of course, as I taught communication courses at Carnegie Mellon, and then I moved to teaching them at Georgia Tech. You can imagine I had many students who were engineers, and they were very interested in these sort of questions as well. So, so the move felt very organic to me. But I think any academic that you speak to, their identity is very tied up in their sort of academic standing, and so the idea of jumping ship, of not being labeled an academic anymore is kind of terrifying. But I ultimately
was it hard for you?
opted to do it. It certainly was, yeah. But you know what? What I learned is that there's this status called an affiliated researcher. So I didn't necessarily have to be a professor or someone on the tenure track in order to continue doing research. So the book project, which is titled Illustration in Fin de siècle, Transatlantic Romance Fiction, and has a chapter devoted to H. Rider Haggard, I wrote it while really not even being an instructor or sort of traditional academic. I had access to the library through this affiliated researcher status, which I maintained by keeping a relationship with the folks at Georgia Tech. And was able to do all my research while having a job in industry. And I think what a lot of academics need to do is think about what it is about academia that they really value. Is it the teaching? Because in industry we spend a lot of time teaching. Sharing our knowledge is something that's extremely important. Is it the research? As an analyst, I get to do research all the time, which is really fun for me. And then, is it really just kind of focusing on the historical aspects? And that was also important to me. So, this status allowed me to keep all the best parts of being an academic while kind of sloughing off the parts that weren't so good, which is, say, the fact that 80% of courses in the university are taught now by, adjuncts or folks who are not on the tenure track line, which is, pretty shocking. That the academy is going through some troubles right now. And the hiring issues are they need to be acknowledged, and I think folks who are considering getting a PhD need to look for other career paths beyond just sort of modeling it on their advisors, or in order to become ostensibly a professor themselves.
I don't know if I told this story before in public, but I briefly explored the possibility of getting a PhD myself, which is interesting given that I'd have to, there's some prerequisites I'd probably have to nail first, like get a formal GED might be part, like step one before proceeding on. And strangely enough for me, it was not the higher level, I guess, contribution to a body of knowledge in a particular direction. I mean, cloud economics being sort of an easy direction for me to go in, given that I eat, sleep, live, and breathe it. But rather the academic rigor around so much of it, and the incentives feel very different, which, to be clear, is a good thing. My entire career path has always been focused on not starving to death. And how do we turn this problem into money? Whereas academia has always seemed to be focused on knowledge for the sake of knowledge without much, if any, thought toward the practical application slash monetization thereof. Is that a fair characterization from where you sit? I'm trying not to actively be insulting, but it's possible I may be unintentionally so.
Not a bit. No, I think you're right on. And so, yeah, like the book that I published, I probably won't see any, remuneration for that. There is very little. I think I'm actually not even sure what the contract says, but I don't intend to make any money with this. Um, Professors, even those who have reached the height of their career, unless they're, on specific paths, don't make a lot of money. Those in the humanities, especially, you don't do this to become wealthy. Um, and the Visual Haggard archive, I don't, everything is in the creative under a Creative Commons license. I don't make money from people, finding images that they're looking for to reproduce, say, on a T-shirt or something. So yeah, I suspect you do it for the love. I always explain it as having a sort of existential anxiety of like trying to, cheat death. I think it was Umberto Eco who said that in order to live forever, you have to have a child and a book. And at this point, I have two children and a book now, so I can just, die, and my, my legacy lives on. But I think, but I do feel like the reasons that folks go into upper, higher education vary, and so I wouldn't want to speak for everyone. But for me, yeah, it is not a place to make money. It's a place to establish sort of, more intangible benefits.
Some of the analyst engagements I've been on that I enjoy the most have been around talking to vendors who are making things. And it starts off invariably as, yeah, we want to go ahead and tell the world about this thing that we've done. And my perspective has always been just a subtle frame shift. It's like, yeah, let me save some time. No one cares. Absolutely no one cares. You're in love with the technical thing that you've built, and the only people who are going to love it as much as you do are either wanting to work where you are, or they're going to go build their own, and they're not going to be your customer. So don't talk about you. No one cares about you. Talk about the pain that you solve. Talk about the painful thing that your target customer is struggling with that you make disappear. And I didn't think that would be A, as revelatory as it turned out to be, and B, a lesson that I had to learn myself when I was doing some product development here, where I once again fell into the easy trap of assuming if I know something, everyone must know it. Therefore, it's easy. Whereas if I don't know something, it's very hard and no one could possibly wrap their head around it. And we all come from different places, and meeting people wherever they are in their journey it's a delicate lesson to learn. I never understood what analysts did until I started being an analyst myself, and I've got a level with you. I spent 6 months of doing those types of engagements feeling like a giant fraud. I'm just a loudmouth with an opinion. What does that mean? Well, in many ways, it means analyst, because it's having an opinion is in so many ways what customers are really after. Raw data, you can find that 1,000 different ways, but finding someone who could talk about what something means, that's harder. And I think that we don't teach anything approaching that in most of our STEM curricula.
Yeah, I think that's really on point. Yeah, I mean, especially when some of these briefings are so mired in acronyms and sort of, assumed specialization. We, I, I know I spend a lot of time just thinking about what it is that confuses me about their pitch more so than what is actually coming through. So I think actually one of the tools that we used as writing instructors when I, in my past life was thinking like someone with an 8th grade education. So I actually think that your reference to having, that sort of chestnut can actually be useful, because you say, if I, took my slide deck and showed it to a bunch of 8th graders, would they understand what it is that I'm saying? Maybe they you don't want them to get the technical details, but what problem does it solve? If they don't understand that, you're not doing a good enough job. And so that to me is actually something that a lot of folks need to hear, that these vendors, because they're just so deep in it, they're so in the weeds that they can't maybe see how someone who's just looking for a database or some platform or whatever, they actually need this sort of simplified and yet I guess broad enough explanation for what it is that they're actually trying to do, what service they actually provide.
From where I sit, one of the hardest things is just reaching people in the right way. I mean, I'm putting out a 1,000 to 2,000 word blog post every week because I apparently hate myself. And that was a constant struggle for me when I started doing that a year or two ago. And what has worked for me to really get me moving down that is, instead of trying to teach everyone all the things, I pick an individual, and it varies from week to week, that I think about, and I want to explain something to that person. And then I wind up directing what it is I'm about to tell, what it is I'm writing to that person. Sometimes they're a complete layperson. Other times they are fairly advanced in a particular area of technology. And the responses to these things differ, but I always learn something from the feedback that I get. And if nothing else, it's one of those ways to become a better writer. Well, I would start by writing. Just do it. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Just go out there and power through things. At least that's my approach. And I'm talking about the burden of writing 1,000 words a week. You wrote an actual book. My belief is that the more people I talk to who've done that, no one actually wants to write a book. People want to have written a book. And that definitely resonates with me. I am tempted to just slap a bunch of these blog posts together and call it a book one of these days as an anthology, but that feels like it's cheating. If I ever decide to go down that path, I want to do it right.
Yeah, I guess I come at it from the perspective of I don't know what I think until I write it down. So it helps me to formulate ideas better. I also feel like my strength is in rereading things and trying to edit them down to really get to the kernel of what it is I think. And a lot of times how I begin a chapter or a blog post or whatever is not where it should begin. That maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. Maybe this is a conclusion. There's something magical in my view that happens when you write, that you are able to pause and take a little bit more time and maybe come up with better words for what it is that you're trying to communicate. I also am, I benefit from readers. So for instance, in my book, I have one chapter that really focuses on Harper's Weekly, which is an American newspaper. I'm not an Americanist. I don't have a deep knowledge of that. So what I did is I revised that chapter and sent it to American periodicals and got feedback from their readers. Super useful. In terms of my blog at RedMonk, anytime I publish something, you can bet that at least one founder and probably at least one other analyst has read it through and given me some extremely incisive feedback. It never is just from my mind. It's something that is a collaboration. And I am, grateful to anyone who takes the time to read my writing, because, all of us have so much time, of course. It really helps me to understand what it is that I'm trying to dig into. So for instance, I've been writing a series for RedMonk on certifications, which makes a lot of sense. I've come from an academic background. Here it is, I'm seeing all these tech certifications. And so it's interesting to me to see, similarities and differences and what sort of issues that we're seeing. sort of come up with them. So for instance, I just wrote about the idea of vendor specific versus vendor neutral certifications. What are the advantages of getting a certification from the CNCF versus from, say, VMware?
I have opinions on all of this, and most of them are terrible.
I'm sure you do. Well, and I, it came naturally out of the job. Sitting through briefings and kind of seeing these things evolve, and the questions that I have from a long history of teaching. But I think it also suggests the collaborative aspect of this of coming to my colleagues. I've been here for what, 4 months, and saying, is this normal? Like, what are we seeing here? Let me write a little bit about what I think is going on with certifications, and then you tell me, what it is that you've seen with your years and years of expertise, right? So Stephen O'Grady's been, doing this for and longer than he likes to admit, right? So this is I am so grateful to have such well-established colleagues that can help me on that journey. But to kind of spiral back to your original question, I think that writing to me is an exploration. It's something that helps me to get to saying something a little more meaningful than just, where I began, just the questions that I have. I can kind of dig down and find some substance there. I would encourage you to take any one of your blog posts and think about maybe or use them as jumping off points for your eventual book, which I will be looking for on newsstands any day now.
I am looking forward to seeing how you continue to evolve your coverage area, as well as reading more of your writings around these things. They always say that the cobbler's children have no shoes, and I am having an ongoing war with the RedMonk RSS feed because I've been subscribed to it 3 times now, and I'm still not seeing everything that comes through, such as your posts. Time for me to go and yell at some people over on your end about how these things work, because it is such good content. And every time RedMonk puts something out, it doesn't matter who over there has written it, I wind up reading it with this sense of envy in that I wish I had written something like this. It is always an experience, and your writing is absolutely no exception to that. You fit in well over there.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I want to thank you for spending so much time talking to me about things that I feel like I am still not quite smart enough to wrap my head around, but that's all right. If people want to learn more, where's the best place to find you?
Certainly Twitter. So my Twitter handle is just my name, Kate Holterhoff. I don't post as often as maybe I should, but I try to maintain a sort of ongoing presence there.
And we will, of course, put a link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kate Holterhoff, analyst at RedMonk. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn, and this is Screaming in the Cloud. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Or if you're on YouTube, smash that like and subscribe button. Whereas if you've hated this podcast, please do the exact same thing. 5-star review, smash the buttons, but then leave an angry, incoherent comment. And it's going to be extremely incoherent because you never learned to properly, technically communicate.